You've never heard the story I'm bringing you today before. This person could be the key to Kane's undoing. The Young and the Restless spoilers reveal that one person could be the key to Kane Ashby's, Billy Flynn, undoing. Want more of The Young and the Restless? Get updates on the latest news about The Young and the Restless, straight to your inbox. We use your personal data for interest-based advertising, as outlined in our privacy notice. What is this? Report ad. Since Kane has been brought back to Genoa City, everyone has been trying to figure out how to stop Kane's insane plan to take over most of the businesses in Genoa City. Perhaps the answer has been there the whole time. This person could be the key to Kane's undoing. Genoa City gossip mills are grinding faster than ever after a mysterious new player, someone who has quietly existed on the edges of Kane Ashby's life, suddenly stepped into the light with information that could shatter his carefully patched-together world. For years Kane has survived scandals, betrayals, presumed deaths, and courtroom calamities. He's been the kind of soap opera hero who reinvents himself just as the floor gives way. But when the right name, the right ledger, and the right memory collide, even the most resilient of men can find themselves exposed. Sources close to the Newman Abbott power circles whisper that the person everyone's now watching is not a revenge-seeking ex or an embittered rival but someone far more dangerous, someone who knows Kane's past in a way no one else does and who holds the kind of proof that doesn't need witnesses, only documents and the occasional silent tape. Who is Elena Morales? If you're picturing a dramatic returnee with a suitcase full of secrets and a theatrical monologue ready for the Newman Ranch lawn, you're only halfway there. Elena is the archetype of those characters that soap writers love because they're plausible and terrifying, the quiet fixer, the background operator, the person who remembers things because their job required it. She wasn't a headline-grabbing lover or a public adversary. She worked behind Kane, as a private secretary at one of the family's shell companies, later involved in accounting, later still a contractor who had to handle delicate paper trails when businesses wanted deniability. She saw Kane at his most human, exhausted, apologetic, cornered, and she saw him at his most calculating, negotiating, covering, and persuading. Insiders say Elena left Genoa City 5 years ago after a disagreement over bookkeeping discrepancies no one wanted to touch. She kept the silence that made her invisible, but she kept the files, too, the ones corporate lawyers would die to suppress and executives would pay fortunes to replace. The difference between a rumor and a legal avalanche is a single document with a signature. Elena's collection includes email chains, scanned invoices, travel receipts, and an undated admission scrawled in a margin that links Kane to a series of decisions he's consistently denied. It's not a single smoking gun. It's a dossier that, when assembled, traces a pattern: money diverted through offshore accounts, ghost consultants who did the talking, and one very human motive threaded through it all. Why now? The timing couldn't be worse for Kane. He's just begun a public reconciliation with parts of his life he'd hoped to bury, a renewed attempt to rebuild trust with family, a fragile truce at Chancellor Winters after recent boardroom tremors, and the kind of community goodwill that can dissipate with a whisper. Elena's return comes at the moment when a crucial trial is on the horizon, when alliances are thin and reputations are currency. The person who once tolerated Kane's contradictions now holds the receipts. Sources close to the Newman family claim Elena's evidence implicates more than just Kane's bookkeeping. It suggests a pattern of influence peddling, favors exchanged for contracts, a network of shell companies funneling money to people who were supposed to be just consultants, and decisions that benefited private interests over the employees, investors, or even the charity fronts that Kane publicly supported. Friends of Kane insist he's been transparent and that any accounting irregularities were the result of sloppy bookkeeping, not malicious intent. But in a town where perception often becomes law, sloppy versus scheming can be a distinction lost in the headlines. The emotional terrain is as volatile as the financial one. Kane's relationship with his loved ones, especially those who have already been burned by his choices, becomes the human cost of Elena's revelations. Imagine Lily, forced to reconcile the man she loves with the ledger entries that suggest negligence bordering on fraud. Imagine a child's innocence entangled in adult betrayals, the way the soap operatic world frames parenting as high-stakes public theater. Elena's dossier threatens not only Kane's career but the fragile trust he's painstakingly rebuilt. It threatens custody arrangements, family business partnerships, and the quiet dignity he'd been clinging to. But what makes Elena uniquely dangerous isn't merely the documents. It's her demeanor and her method. She's not a showman. She doesn't appear on social media with dramatic reveals. She is, according to multiple people who have encountered her since her return, methodical, patient, and unervingly calm. She has been quietly contacting people who once worked for Kane, piecing together corroborations, and giving journalists and lawyers just enough to keep interest alive without revealing everything at once. That's how real-world reputations die, a drip that never stops. There are whispers, too, of a recorded conversation, not a high-quality cinematic confession but a normal, overlooked call captured in the ordinary way corporate phones do. In it, Kane allegedly discusses a route for moving funds and mentions names that have not previously been associated with financial improprieties. If verified, the call would be devastating. Records and recorded calls function differently in courtrooms than salacious gossip does on daytime talk shows. Elena seems to understand that difference, which makes her a far more formidable adversary than the tabloid fodder of past gossip columns. The ripple effects could reach beyond Kane into the institutions that sheltered or enabled him. If the paper trail shows that board members turned a blind eye, if it ties decisions to personal profit instead of corporate stewardship, we're looking at resignations, regulatory investigations, and the kind of corporate cleansing that leaves careers in tatters. In Genoa City, some of the most shocking exits have come not from dramatic confrontations but from silent votes and sealed settlements, choices made in comfortable boardrooms that do more damage when torn open. Elena's files could force such doors wide. From a strategic standpoint, Kane has options, though none are enviable. He can litigate to suppress documents, a move that could keep things out of public view but would also draw attention and drain resources. He can go public with mea culpas, attempting to frame any wrongdoing as mistakes and inviting forgiveness. He can fight Elena directly, confronting her, discrediting her, or buying her silence. Each path carries enormous personal and professional risk, and in Genoa City, spin often splinters into scandal. There's also the human angle subtext soap writers love. Elena is said to have a personal reason for targeting Kane, a wrong that goes beyond spreadsheets. A family member hurt by a choice he made, a friendship betrayed, motives that transform a cold dossier into a story of revenge, restitution, or both. But people who have spoken with her insist on the opposite. Elena's motives are pragmatic, not theatrical. She wants restitution, accountability, maybe closure. That ambiguity, is she seeking money, justice, or catharsis? Makes her unpredictable. Kane's allies are already scrambling. Loyalists argue that Kane has been through worse, that Elena's reappearance resembles the ghost town returns of yesteryear, characters re-emerging to disrupt a fragile peace. They point to his work at Chancellor Winters, his attempts at redemption, and the family that has repeatedly chosen to stand by him. Being redeemed is a narrative soap characters are constantly granted, being exposed is a different kind of narrative endpoint. If Elena's evidence is partial, Kane's defenders hope he can outmaneuver the fallout. If it's comprehensive, their options narrow quickly. There is historical precedent in Genoa City for the way a single person can upend another's life. Time and again, people with grisly memories or quiet records have triggered cascades of consequences. Elena fits that pattern, unassuming, meticulous, and willing to let documents speak louder than speeches. The truth, as the town's veterans know, isn't always a dramatic revelation on a rain-soaked balcony. Often it's a suit of well-organized files delivered at precisely the wrong moment. What's particularly combustible in this storyline is the involvement of other powerful families. If Elena's files tie into the Newman or Abbott interests, and several hints suggest they do, then we're not just watching one man's undoing, we may be watching the unraveling of alliances and rivals who have been building leverage for decades. When loyalties are transactional, revelations change the calculus overnight. A sponsor becomes an enemy, a colleague becomes a witness, and the alliances Kane once relied on may contract like a net around him. For viewers and readers who relish the theatrical, Elena's return is a deliciously layered development. It's the quiet storm that precedes a major axis shift. It's the moment when someone from the background steps forward and the world suddenly has to reassign blame, rewrite histories, and reconcile affection with evidence. It's also a reminder that in serialized drama, no one is ever truly safe, not when past choices leave trails and not when someone patient enough decides to follow them. Legal experts in our narrative speculate about the potential outcomes. If the documents are authentic and admissible, Kane could face civil suits, corporate penalties, and a loss of fiduciary trust that would make it impossible for him to hold executive roles. If they're not admissible, the court of public opinion may still deliver a verdict. The court of public opinion is often less forgiving than any judge because it mixes emotion with rumor and rarely grants second acts without cost. And in this town, reputations are currency as much as money is. A tarnished name means slashed opportunities, fractured relationships, and the humiliating spectacle of friends choosing self-preservation over loyalty. Kane's personal life will be the collateral everyone watches most closely. Soap opera makers understand that professional collapse is a vehicle for intimate drama, spouses confronting lies, children inheriting scandal, ex-lovers revived as unexpected champions or merciless prosecutors. Elena's influence will test friendships and marriages, forcing characters to decide where their moral center lies. Will they stand by Kane out of love, pragmatism, or because exposure threatens their own secrets? Those decisions will ripple through Genoa City like a shockwave. What happens next is, unsurprisingly, unpredictable. Elena has already made a few tactical moves that indicate she is not a troll or an opportunist. She's been careful to corroborate details, to approach people who can validate her claims, and to leak tantalizing but incomplete evidence that ensures sustained interest. That suggests a long-game strategy: destabilize Kane slowly and steadily, force errors, and wait for fissures to open. It's a strategy that has worked before in both real life and dramaturgy, and it's particularly effective against someone whose reputation has been built on partial truths and charm. Kane himself, if history is any judge, will fight. He has always been a character who resists defeat, who uses charisma to buy time, and who surprises opponents with last-minute maneuvers. Will he manage to outmaneuver Elena? Will he leverage allies, legal tactics, or a public confession to defuse the dossier? Or will the accumulation of small facts become an avalanche that erodes even the foundations of his goodwill? Genoa City fans will be watching every phone call, every boardroom vote, and every whispered conversation, looking for the moment the scales tip. Finally, consider the moral angle Elena represents. Soap operas thrive on moral reckonings: who deserves mercy, who deserves punishment, and how communities rebuild after betrayal. Elena's return forces a town to decide whether truth is valued above forgiveness, whether accountability is a necessary purge or a cruel spectacle. For Kane, the questions become painfully personal. Was his past driven by survival or selfishness? Can the man he has become be judged by the man he once was? For Genoa City, the situation becomes a test of the community's tolerance for hypocrisy and its appetite for justice. One thing is certain: this is not the last we've heard of Elena Morales. The files she carries are not just paper, they are levers. And in the world of daytime drama, levers can topple thrones. Whether Kane's undoing will ultimately be triumphant justice or a messy compromise remains to be seen. What isn't in doubt is the pleasure and the pain this new chapter will bring to viewers, the delicious despair of watching a public figure teeter, the frantic counsel in the background, the whispered alliances forming in dimly lit rooms. Elena has lit a fuse. For Kane Ashby, the final act, whatever it looks like, is now unavoidably underway. What happened to Kane Ashby's other son? Matty Ashby, last played by Lexi Stevenson, and Charlie Ashby, last played by Noah Alexander Jerry, are not the only children that Kane has, even though he acts like they are the only ones who matter. Where is Kane's son Sam, last played by Lou twins? Of course, Kane cheated on Lily with Juliet Helton, last played by Laura Allen. Where is Sam, and why has Kane not mentioned him even once since he has been back? To be honest, no one has asked about him either. However, Sam could be the key to getting Kane back under control. Could Sam be the one to bring Kane back to Earth and get him under control? Can Sam rescue the threat to the company's Port Charles? What happened to Kane Ashby's other son? For years, fans of The Young and the Restless have followed Kane Ashby's dramatic journey, the scandals, the love affairs, the lies, the tragedies, and the redemptions that defined one of Genoa City's most complex men. But there's one mystery that continues to haunt longtime viewers and spark endless debate across fan forums: what really happened to Kane Ashby's other son? While the show has offered glimpses, hints, and heartbreak, the full story remains shrouded in silence, until now. Behind the emotional turmoil and shattered family ties lies a narrative more layered, more heartbreaking, and more unexpected than anyone imagined. When Kane first arrived in Genoa City, he was a man of mystery himself, claiming to be the long-lost son of Philip Chancellor III, a role later revealed as part of a scheme that spiraled far beyond his control. Yet, over time, audiences saw his genuine heart emerge, especially as he fell deeply in love with Lily Winters. Together, Kane and Lily built a family that became a pillar of daytime television, devoted parents raising twins, Charlie and Maddie, while navigating betrayal, secrets, and redemption. But in the chaos of that love story, whispers of another child, a son lost, hidden, or taken, began to surface, hinting at a truth too painful to face. The story of Kane's other son begins years before he met Lily, during his complicated past in Australia. Before Kane reinvented himself in Genoa City, he lived a life defined by crime, secrets, and blurred loyalties. In that world, Kane was not the upright husband and father fans would later see. He was a man caught between obligation and survival. He was entangled with dangerous people, including Colin Atkinson, his manipulative father, and Genevieve, the mother who tried but failed to shield him from that darkness. It was during those years that the tragedy took root, when Kane reportedly fathered a child with a woman from his past, a woman who vanished before he ever had the chance to hold his son. The woman's name was Juliet Helton, a name that would later resurface in Kane's Genoa City storyline in an entirely different context. Years after Kane had rebuilt his life with Lily, Juliet returned, bringing with her a revelation that would send shockwaves through their marriage: she was pregnant with Kane's child. The news was a bombshell that reignited Kane's cycle of guilt and self-destruction. Juliet's pregnancy came after a drunken night in Tokyo, a night Kane barely remembered. It destroyed the fragile trust between him and Lily, setting off one of the show's most emotional arcs. The child, Sam, was born amidst heartbreak, but what happened next remains the true heart of the mystery. Juliet tragically died shortly after giving birth, leaving Kane alone to raise Sam. For a brief, bittersweet period, viewers watched Kane struggle to balance his grief, guilt, and newfound fatherhood. He tried to bring Sam into his fractured family, hoping Lily would find it in her heart to accept the baby as part of their lives. But Lily, torn apart by betrayal and still grieving their broken marriage, couldn't do it. The couple's separation became inevitable. Kane raised Sam quietly, often off-screen, while the storylines around him grew more complicated: new romances, business conflicts, and emotional collapses. Then, in a strange twist that even seasoned viewers found puzzling, Sam seemed to disappear from the canvas. One moment, he was Kane's emotional anchor; the next, he was gone, rarely mentioned, never seen, and completely absent from Kane's later storylines. So, what happened? According to Y&R insiders, the decision to fade out Sam's storyline wasn't accidental. It was part of a creative shift meant to refocus Kane's character after years of turmoil. Writers reportedly planned to send Kane overseas for a business opportunity that would quietly take Sam with him, creating an off-screen father-son bond while keeping the door open for a potential return. However, the transition never materialized fully on screen, leaving fans confused and frustrated. Some interpreted it as a narrative oversight, while others believed the disappearance was intentional, a setup for a future revelation that was ultimately abandoned when the writers moved in new directions. Behind the scenes, though, the emotional void left by Sam's absence mirrored Kane's own unraveling. Without his son's presence to humanize him, Kane's storylines began drifting into repetitive arcs: redemption, betrayal, collapse, and withdrawal. The absence of Sam not only deprived Kane of purpose but also left a piece of his identity unexplored. Viewers who had watched him transform from con artist to devoted father felt cheated of a redemption arc that could have cemented Kane as one of the show's great patriarchs. Instead, the silence around Sam became symbolic, a missing child representing Kane's moral and emotional exile. There's also speculation that the show deliberately left Sam's whereabouts ambiguous to protect the possibility of a dramatic re-entry years later. Imagine, fans say, if Sam returned as a teenager, carrying the resentment of abandonment, the confusion of identity, and the yearning for answers. Soap operas thrive on generational drama, and Sam's re-emergence could easily ignite new conflicts between the Winters and Ashby legacies. It's the kind of twist The Young and the Restless has built its reputation on: the sins of the father revisiting the son, the ghosts of the past clashing with the present. For now, though, Sam remains a ghost, a name occasionally whispered in nostalgia but never spoken with closure. On a deeper level, Kane's missing son storyline speaks to a broader theme that Y&R has explored for decades: the cost of secrets, and how love can both destroy and redeem. Kane's journey is a constant balancing act between who he was and who he wants to be. His lost son embodies that tension, a living reminder of the man he used to be, the mistakes that haunt him, and the love he could never fully repair. In that sense, Sam's absence is more than a plot hole, it's a metaphor for the emptiness Kane carries. Every time he speaks of family, every time he reaches for connection, the missing presence of that little boy lingers between the lines. Some fans hold on to hope that the show will eventually return to the storyline. It's not unprecedented. The Young and the Restless has revived characters presumed dead, revealed secret children decades later, and reintroduced forgotten plotlines when least expected. If Sam were to return, the possibilities are endless. He could come back as a rebellious teenager searching for answers about his mother's death. He could be manipulated by one of Kane's old enemies, turning him against the father who never raised him. He could even serve as the bridge that brings Kane back to Genoa City after years in exile. One small piece of dialogue, one old photo, or one DNA test could reignite a story that's been waiting to breathe again. What's particularly poignant about Kane's story is how much of it revolves around loss. He's lost his identity, his father's respect, his marriage, his fortune, and now, in narrative silence, his son. Every time he tries to rebuild, something from his past resurfaces to pull him under. His lost son is both his punishment and his hope. If he ever gets the chance to reunite with Sam, it would represent more than a family reunion. It would symbolize Kane's ultimate redemption, a man finally confronting the one mistake he can't charm, negotiate, or lie his way out of. Behind the fiction, the absence of Sam has also sparked real-world curiosity among fans and media outlets. Actor Daniel Goddard, who played Kane, was often asked about the storyline during interviews. Though he rarely revealed specifics, he acknowledged that he, too, wondered what happened to Sam and whether Y&R would ever explore it again. Goddard's departure from the show in 2019 left the storyline frozen in limbo. Without him, there was no father figure to anchor Sam's reappearance. Yet, as soap opera fans know, absence is never the end. Time in Genoa City bends, and the writers have a way of resurrecting what's been buried. In recent fan discussions online, theories about Sam's fate have taken on a life of their own. Some believe Sam was sent to live with relatives in Australia, safely away from the chaos that defined Kane's later years. Others think he's been living under a different name, perhaps unaware of his true parentage. A few bold fans even speculate that Sam was adopted into a powerful Genoa City family, setting up a shocking future revelation when identities collide. Every theory, no matter how wild, underscores one truth: Sam's absence left a hole in the Y&R universe that refuses to close. There's also an emotional undercurrent that makes this mystery particularly haunting. In a genre where children are often plot devices, Sam stood for something rare: innocence caught between adult failure and hope. His mother's death, his father's shame, and his vanishing act combine into a tragedy that feels quietly real. Kane may have survived his public scandals, but privately, the loss of Sam is his unhealed wound. Every redemption arc rings hollow because viewers remember the child who never got his father's full attention, the son who disappeared into narrative ether. If The Young and the Restless ever revisits the storyline, it could serve as the emotional centerpiece of Kane's long-awaited comeback. Imagine Kane returning to Genoa City years later, older, wiser, haunted, only to discover that his lost son is back too, now a young man with questions, anger, and his mother's eyes. That's the kind of soap gold that could reignite the Ashby legacy and pull old fans back to their screens. It would close a circle that's been open for far too long, giving closure to one of the most overlooked yet emotionally potent storylines in the show's history. Until then, the question remains: what happened to Kane Ashby's other son? The answer lives somewhere between the lines, in the forgotten scripts, in the silent moments when Kane stares into space and remembers what he's lost. Sam may not be on screen, but his presence lingers like an echo, in Kane's regrets, in the spaces between his redemptions, and in the hearts of fans who refuse to forget. Maybe one day, Genoa City will hear that echo again. Maybe one day, the father and son will find their way back to each other. But for now, the mystery endures, haunting, unfinished, and waiting to be told. What is this? Report ad. How could Sam Ashby make a difference? Technically, Sam would turning 8 next month, however, that soaps often put kids through soap opera rapid aging syndrome, which could make Sam just about an adult now, or at least a teenager with some pretty touch opinion about Kane and his obvious greed. Sam might simply wonder why his father is never satisfied. Just imagine Sam saying, "Dad, do you think this BS with the fake name and constant attempts to steal everyone's company is going to win you any points with Lily? I've been on, 2 dates in my whole life, and even I know that's not the way to impress a girl." What happened to Kane's son? What happened to Kane? So, there was no mention of him being with him when he was spending time with his father. Kane has not mentioned his son, neither has anyone else who should have. Where is Kane's son? Has he shipped him off to boarding school? Did the child not survive? This kid couldn't have disappeared off the face of the earth, so where is he and why doesn't his opinion matter? Is it possible that Sam doesn't want to be anywhere near Lily and her kids? Is that why he is nowhere to be found? Has Kane left him with another person just to keep him happy and out of the way? Will Sam suddenly show up in Genoa City and confront his father after all? What happened to Kane's son? It's the question that continues to haunt the Young and the Restless fans years after Kane Ashby disappeared from Genoa City. What happened to his son? Viewers who have followed Kane's emotional roller coaster from the beginning know that his story has always been one of reinvention and heartbreak. He's been the con man who became a hero, the husband who fought for love, and the father who tried to hold his family together despite impossible odds. But behind the business suits, betrayals, and tearful goodbyes lies a story few truly understand: the mysterious fate of Kane's youngest child, a boy who was once the center of his world, and who then quietly vanished from the screen, leaving fans wondering, where did he go, and why did the Young and the Restless let him fade into silence? Kane's complicated family history has always been a web of lies, secrets, and second chances. When he first came to Genoa City, he was a mystery man pretending to be Philip Chancellor III, a scheme masterminded by his manipulative father, Colin Atkinson. But as Kane found love with Lily Winters, his charm and determination won over both his on-screen family and audiences at home. The two built a life together, raising twins Charlie and Maddie, and despite the chaos that followed them, from affairs and secret identities to near-death experiences, their love story became a cornerstone of Genoa City's modern era. Then came the twist that changed everything: Kane's drunken night with Juliet Helton in Tokyo. It was one of the show's most controversial moments, a decision that shattered his marriage and destroyed the trust Lily had fought so hard to rebuild. When Juliet later returned pregnant, claiming Kane was the father, the fallout was immediate. Lily was devastated, Kane was consumed by guilt, and fans braced themselves for what would come next. Juliet's pregnancy forced Kane to confront not only his mistakes but also his future as a father once again. In the summer of 2017, Juliet gave birth to a baby boy named Sam. The moment was bittersweet, a new life born from betrayal. Tragically, Juliet's joy was short-lived. She died soon after giving birth, leaving Kane alone to raise the baby. Those scenes, Kane standing in the hospital room, holding his newborn son with tears streaming down his face, remain some of the most powerful in the show's recent history. For a brief moment, it seemed like redemption might be possible. Kane vowed to honor Juliet's memory and be the father Sam deserved. He named the boy Samuel Kane Ashby, a symbol of hope and forgiveness in the wreckage of his past. But as fans know, that hope didn't last. Lily couldn't accept the baby, not at first. The wound of betrayal was too raw, the reminder too painful. Their once solid marriage began to crumble. The twins, too, struggled to process the reality of their half-brother's existence. Kane found himself torn between two worlds, the family he'd built and the innocent child who represented his biggest mistake. For months, Y&R viewers watched him fight to balance both, desperate to keep his family from splintering completely. Eventually, Lily softened. In one of the most emotional arcs of the storyline, she agreed to let Kane bring Sam home, hoping they could build a blended family. It was a fragile piece, one that offered glimpses of the man Kane could be, a devoted father, a man determined to make amends. For a while, things looked hopeful. Scenes of Kane feeding Sam, walking him through Chancellor Park, and gently talking to him about Juliet showed a rare, tender side of the character that fans adored. Then, without warning, Sam's presence on the show began to fade. He appeared less and less, reduced to mentions in passing, until one day, he was simply gone. No farewell, no explanation, no heartbreaking goodbye scene. Kane continued appearing in storylines unrelated to his son, and as his own life spiraled once again, Sam became one of the great off-screen mysteries of the young and the restless. So what happened? There are two answers, one on-screen, and one off-screen. On-screen, the show quietly implied that Kane was caring for Sam while also trying to rebuild his life. As his storylines shifted to business conflicts and romantic entanglements, Sam was said to be spending time with nannies, friends, or relatives. The show never made a definitive statement, leaving viewers to fill in the blanks. Some fans speculated that Sam had been sent to live with Kane's mother, Genevieve, or even Colin's extended family in Australia. Others believed Lily had temporarily taken custody when Kane's troubles deepened. Off-screen, however, the truth is simpler, and sadder. When actor Daniel Goddard, who played Kane, exited The Young and the Restless in 2019, the writers were forced to put all of Kane's family storylines on hold. His departure effectively ended Sam's on-screen existence, as the young child's story couldn't continue without his father's presence. Without Kane in Genoa City, the writers chose not to recast the role or build Sam's story independently. Instead, they quietly retired both characters from the current narrative, hoping that one day the door could reopen for a dramatic return. That decision left fans feeling conflicted. Many viewers had hoped to see Sam grow up in Genoa City, surrounded by his siblings and caught between the Winters and Ashby legacies. They envisioned a future where Sam, as a teenager, could confront the truth about his mother's death, his father's mistakes, and the family that once rejected him. Instead, his story was left unresolved, a ghost of a character that once carried immense emotional potential. For Cain, the loss of Sam, both in the narrative and in spirit, symbolized the end of his own redemption arc. His journey had always been about family, about proving that love could heal even the deepest wounds. Sam represented the possibility of that healing, a chance for Cain to be a better man. But without him, Cain's story closed on a note of unfinished business. Fans were left with the sense that Cain had once again lost everything, his marriage, his career, and now, quietly, his son. In the years since Cain's departure, The Young and the Restless has continued to evolve, introducing new families and new dramas. Yet the absence of Sam Ashby still lingers like an unfinished chord. Soap operas thrive on legacy, on children growing up to continue their parents' stories, and Sam was a perfect candidate for that kind of long-term storytelling. The son of Cain and Juliet, half-brother to Lily's twins, heir to two complicated families, his future could have reshaped the show's generational landscape. Instead, he's become one of the many lost children of Genoa City, characters who exist somewhere off-screen, waiting to be rediscovered. But what if that rediscovery isn't as far away as it seems? In recent months, fan speculation has exploded on social media, with rumors swirling that the show might revisit the Ashby family in the near future. With Y&R revisiting classic families and weaving in next-generation characters, many believe it's only a matter of time before Sam resurfaces, older, wiser, and carrying his father's charm and flaws. The idea of a teenage Sam returning to Genoa City, perhaps angry at Cain for leaving him behind, could be the emotional jolt the show needs. He could challenge the Winters family, stir up old tensions, and bring back the legacy of Cain and Lily's love story in a fresh, powerful way. If that day ever comes, the writers will have a goldmine of emotional material to draw from. Imagine Sam discovering the truth about his mother's death and realizing that his father's mistakes cost him not just a family, but an identity. Imagine him confronting Lily and the twins, forcing them to reckon with the family they tried to forget. Or perhaps Cain himself could return, older and humbler, seeking forgiveness, only to face a son who barely remembers him. Those are the kinds of stories Y&R does best: generational wounds, forgiveness earned through struggle, and the bittersweet reunion of hearts long divided. Until then, the mystery of what happened to Cain's son remains one of Genoa City's quietest tragedies. In a world where characters come back from the dead and hidden children appear every season, Sam's absence feels almost too real, a reminder that sometimes, loss doesn't need a dramatic explosion to hurt. Sometimes, it's just the quiet disappearance of someone who was supposed to matter forever. Fans still talk about Sam with a mix of affection and sadness. They remember the tiny baby Cain held so gently, the child who represented both guilt and hope. They remember Cain whispering promises to protect him, unaware that time and circumstance would make those promises impossible to keep. They remember the way Sam's birth changed everything, for Cain, for Lily, and for The Young and the Restless itself. And they keep hoping, as soap fans always do, that someday, someone will walk into Genoa City claiming to be Sam Ashby, the boy who vanished, now a man with his own secrets to tell. Because in Genoa City, the past never stays buried forever. Every lie finds daylight, every heartbreak finds a sequel, and every missing child eventually finds their way home. Maybe Sam will be next. Maybe Cain will return with him, ready to face the life he left behind. Or maybe Sam will appear on his own, a mystery in the making, carrying the same haunted eyes as his father. Whatever happens, one thing is certain: the story of Cain Ashby's son isn't over. It's just waiting for its moment to begin again.